All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the design tool because we've got some folks who are here that use it and some who don't, who want to know more about it. So we'll tell you a little bit about that. And then we're going to go through some of the mechanics of how does this thing work and what does it really do? What's valuable about it? And then we'll give you some best practices for facilitation and kind of end with some options around how can I learn more about it if I don't know? Or what are my resources for facilitation that could help me if I do have it, but want to make sure I do an even better job of getting teams together and getting the value. So design, which is sometimes called team discovery, is a separate optional software subscription. So for all of you, it's unlike other things with PI where before everything was included in your annual license. This is a newer tool and it's optional. So you can choose to buy a subscription to it or not. And editorial commentary, we don't love it in terms of this separate subscription that has separate pricing. Our preference is always one price annual license, you get everything. But since we don't get to make those decisions, we have to live with it. But that's our view. It's a great tool. Don't like the approach. So the way it works is you can choose to have a number of teams I want to use for a annual year, 12-month period, right? It could be 2 or 10 or 20 or 50, and then you pay a set amount, but you can only use that many teams. Or you can do what you're familiar with, which is you could get an unlimited number of teams and it's set by your license and your employee headcount. So for example, you could buy 20 teams and that's $8,000. It's just for that 12-month period. Or if you're a 300-person organization, you could have unlimited teams for $7,166. So different options are appropriate for different clients. We'll share the pricing for your organization if you're interested, but we wanted to make sure we were really clear, like this is a separate tool that you have to pay for to get access to. Now, many of you are familiar with the ability to create teams in your PI software. That hasn't changed. You can create as many teams as you want, like you always have in your PI software, unlimited, right? And you can do things like the analytics, look at a group of people, right? Or look at the factor combos of a group of people and other things like that. So no change to that. It's still included. You can still create as many teams as you want and do all these analytics to your heart's content. But if you want to use the design software specifically, that's where you would incur a fee based on teams or unlimited use based on your employee headcount. So let me pause for a moment to just see if there's any questions about that, because we don't want you to be surprised by any of this stuff in terms of, hey, that's super cool. How do I go use it? Wait a second, I have to pay for it. No fun, and we don't want that for you guys. So any questions about that? Okay. All right. So now let's talk about what the tool is and what it does. When you see it in the software, it looks like this. This is kind of that home screen. You have design. And when you go there and click on design, it talks about team discovery, part 1 and part 2. And there are 2 elements. The first element of using design is called discover your team type. And this is really meant to help a team look at and improve the effectiveness of how they work together by identifying what type of team it is. The software does that for you, and what the likely strengths and likely caution areas of that team are, so that a team can help better understand who's good at what and individually, and what strengths do they bring and what might they be good at, as well as how do we work together more effectively by addressing both the strengths and our caution areas. So that's the first part of it, is kind of this internal help a team be better together by how it functions. And PI has done work on the science of this to define what are the different team types that are out there in the world, and what do those teams generally have strengths in and areas of caution or gaps in. The second part, which is called design for strategic action, you actually look at the goals of the team, and then you take a look at objectives or In other words, things the team needs to be good at to achieve those goals. And you select 3 to 5 objectives or things the team needs to be good at to achieve those goals. And then the software does a little bit of cool magic of, all right, you have decided that this is your strategy type or the things you need to be good at to execute your goals. And it will compare the team and say, your team is probably going to do these areas well, strengths, and caution areas might have some gaps. And again, it's not just the awareness piece. It's once you have that awareness, what action plans could we build that would help this team achieve those goals more effectively? Or in part one, that would help this team be more effective together. So a cool part of it is certainly the awareness you get of your team type and the strengths and the caution areas. But the best part of it is let's do something about it, right? Let's take actions to make sure that those strengths are leveraged and those gaps don't get in our way of achieving success. And that's where this design thing can impact outcomes. So we're going to go much deeper into kind of the overview of the process of discover team type and strategic action and some best practices and share some case studies. But before I do, just let me pause, see if there's any questions so far. And of course, put them in the chat, right? And we'll make sure we get them. But just want to take a moment here and make sure there's any questions so far.
Nothing
okay.
Yet.
All right. Keep on rocking and rolling. So why use design or where can it help, right? Complex teams that maybe have people that do or don't know each other, or the task that they need to accomplish has some complexity and significance to it, right? And we need to make sure that this team is highly successful. Great case study. A new team, or maybe a new leader that would benefit from being better aligned for sure, right? And what else? High stakes teams, right? Sometimes these are leadership teams. Other times they might be cross-functional teams that are working on key strategic initiatives, right? Boy, some of the most important stuff that we have to get done this year, this team is working on, and we want to do some things to better ensure their success. Great. Teams that have some trouble, right? Stuck, unable to make headway, or have some dysfunction on them. Yep, great candidate. And one of the ways design doesn't always get used, but is a great case, is a lot of you have goals or initiatives, right, that you're working on already, or you assign for a group. And when you do that, sometimes you put cross-functional teams or teams of people within your own department together. And that often gets done by deciding by silos of title and knowledge and experience. Well, this actually allows you to say, if we want to achieve these goals, how could we decide first what the team needs to be good at, and then actually back into populating it with the kinds of people that would likely make this team highly successful, which is great, right? Because then you're starting to build the team based on what they actually have to be good at. So there's a little implication here that this stuff might be for teams that are broken and dysfunctional. Yes, but not just that. Any team, even good teams that are doing well, that are functional, can get significant value and get better from this process. And I think part of what has impressed us as we work with clients on it is how fast you can get to kind of agreed upon aligned truth and get to some actions. It's not weeks and weeks and weeks, it's some hours. And if you think about the expense of a team, right? Put people in a room together and add up their, hourly salary times the hours that they're meeting. Any team you form is by its nature expensive investment, right? And there's a reason that all of our children hate working in teams at school on projects, right? And we don't love it either because it doesn't go great, usually on its own. But this is what's marvelous about this, is the intervention you can have pretty quickly to make some significant differences in outcomes. So I just want to make sure everyone's good and clear, like this is not just for broken, right? This is also for good, solid, and highly functional teams, because any team, what if it got better at the stuff that would make a difference in outcomes? Now we're cooking, right? Now we got something really cool going on. So what design focuses on is who are the people on the team, right? What are their behaviors? individually and collectively, and what does that mean for the team? It also allows you to think about what work you're doing. What is the kind of team this is, and what are the goals and objectives that we're trying to work on? So it lets you bring in context, which context is everything on this. Also, what are the actions that the team needs to do well to succeed, right? In other words, what does the team need to be good at in order to execute and do things on time, on quality, successfully? What else is going on here? Well, one of the things that this process does is help increase trust, right? This is not a kumbaya process where everyone has to be friends at the end, because that's not how it works, right? But trust is, I know what the strengths and motivators are of other people in my team. I know where they can play well and what they're going to be good at and not, and what to expect. Not only that, but I also know, how do I work with Hero, and how does Hero know how to work with Tom on this team? What do I do and not do so that we can increase our speed to trust and effectiveness by not just identifying team strengths and gaps, but also knowing what is Hero going to be great at and contribute well, what's she not? And same thing for me, right? That's a pretty important element to help a team go faster. Alignment, right? What is it we have to be good at? And how does that compare to what our team actually is good at? Now that we can do that quickly and accurately, we can take some actions, right? If we get aligned on what the truth is, right, about our team, here's where we're good, here's where we're not, then we can get to the actions. I've been in a lot of teams, executive teams and other teams over my career, where we spend a lot of time sitting around and pontificating and arguing about, why are we good at this and not good at this, right? And what are we really good at and not good at? One of the things that I've found great and stunning is when we've gone in and shared this tool with teams, they look at it and they go, yep, that's right, that's us. I mean, I've actually been shocked. And I want to give PI total credit for how good the team is at kind of nailing those strengths and gaps. When I first started doing this, I thought, I wonder how many of these are going to be really resonant when a team sees their own strengths and their own gaps or caution areas. And without fail, it's almost every single one of them. They go, yeah, that's us, right? And now you can move to well, let's do something about it if that is us, instead of sit around debating whether it's true or not, right? And then the execution piece is the big deal. And with this, what's really good is 1 or 2 simple actions is all we're asking teams to sign up for, because 1 or 2 simple things can move the needle. And we'll give you some case study examples of this, but this is kind of the ingredients that kind of make design go. So kind of here's what's in it, if you will, that makes it good for sure. So when you are in the software, we're going to walk through this first part, section 1, which is discover your team type, which again is, how do I help a team be more effective together? So when you're in the software, you have these 4 quadrants based on behaviors of people, right? Quadrant of innovation and agility. People are good at that part. Here's the teamwork and employee experience, folks that are good there. Process and precision, results and discipline. And when you create a team, right, these are all people that have these different behaviors. And the further up into the left corner someone is, the stronger those behaviors are going to be. The more towards the middle, the more moderate probably their overall graph is. And when you see 2 people side by side right here, right, it doesn't mean they're having an inappropriate work relationship with others and we've just outed them and how dare they. It just means that their behaviors are really similar. And so it's trying to squeeze them into that little space. But what you're doing when you discover team type, right, it will tell you, and this again is the research that PI's science team has done on this, to say that this collection of people like this happens to be a pathfinding team. And it's going to give you some headlines: fast-paced, goal-oriented, competitive, and then a description to say this is what the team is like. And again, when you have people read this about their team, they're likely going to go, that's us. It's kind of like how people read their BA assessment, right? Is every single line 100% right? Maybe not, but is it 90% or 95%? Usually. Same thing happens here where people go, yep, that's us. And then with the team, it will give you 3 boxes. It's just cut off a little bit here of strengths. and 3 areas of caution to go, here's what this team probably does well together. And here's the cautions. Every single team will have strengths and cautions. There is no, boy, this is the best kind of team to have, the worst kind of team to have. Every team is going to have some strengths and cautions based on the mix of humans that they've got, right? So part of what you do with this then is, in this first step, which we're going to talk about, is you're going to look through the individual people and talk about them and their behaviors and strengths and what quadrant they're in and what they bring to the team, and kind of look at how many people you have in each quadrant, right? This team has a lot of people in innovation and agility, less in process and precision. Sure. And when you are working through this, what you're wanting to do is understand those individual behaviors. Think about a PI behavioral assessment, right? Which is, what are the strengths that this person brings? What are their motivators and what do they need, right? At an individual level, so you can review that and help people know more about that with each other. And at a team level, strengths and gaps, right? So that you can create an increased sense of awareness of who's good at what on this team and what should I do? What are my do's and don'ts? When I'm working with Hero, I got a couple do's with her. I know where she can help this team. And Hero's going to get a couple do's and don'ts on me, so that individually you get takeaways and you have a sense of who's bringing what to this team. Hero's right here in this teamwork and employee experience category, right? So now I know Hero can help us in those kind of areas. She also probably can stretch down here into process and precision a little bit because she's pretty close to this line. But on this first part, right, you're getting a look at the team and the strengths and caution areas about how the team does work together. And you're going to build actions around that, which we'll talk more about. But this is what it looks like in the software. So, right, other things you can do is, if I click on Hero, it will give me a little crib notes version of her strengths, right? And her work style, potential caution areas with that. And what about, let's go to me. Okay, same thing. It's going to give my strengths, preferred work style, potential caution areas, right? And you have an even ability to say, check mark a box that say, this is the leader of the team or leaders of this team if you want to, so that you can see that. But it's part of the way to kind of walk through each person as you're talking first about them as individuals. Here's their strengths, here's work style, here's a couple do's and don'ts, right? And when you do that, what happens is you lower any defensiveness, right? Because people are worried, is this going to tell me, Tom, that I'm a lousy member of this team, or I'm not the right person for this team, or am I going to have to defend myself a little bit? That's not productive. That's not helpful. That's not people at their best self, right? If we go through my strengths and what the do's and don'ts are with me and where I can bring value to the team and Hero and each other person, now we've level set and people feel heard and they feel accurately valued. And now they're not as likely worried about, do I have to defend what I'm not great at? No, because what we're really going to focus on is the strengths and what you bring to the team. So that individual walk through first, so that everyone knows more about what is Hero great at, where are her strengths, what should she do and help this team on, and a couple do's and don'ts. And then we're going to look at the team as a whole and say, great, we got a lot of people in innovation and agility, not so many in process and precision, and look at our strengths and gaps, all right? So that first piece is that, which is we're going to look at individuals, and then we're going to kind of go by quadrant and go through all the people that are innovation and agility good and talk about them, right? We'll have talked about this and say, okay, an exploring team, guys, what resonates? What feels right and correct about that and true? And make sure we make note of that, walk through our folks individually and collectively and go, yeah, no wonder we've got a lot of strengths in it that resonate with innovation and agility, and gaps that might tie to the things we're not great at. Right? So it will give you these 3 strengths, these 3 caution areas as a team. So once we've walked through each individual, right, and talked about their strengths, work style, do's and don'ts, we're going to look at the team as a whole, see what resonates there, and see what resonates about our strengths and caution areas. And now we've got a pretty accurate look at what's going on with this team, right? And what you really do when you're facilitating this is you're going to have them turn these strengths into real examples of how that shows up, right? So they might take these vanilla strengths and say, write down some examples of exactly how that strength shows up in this team and how that caution area shows up in this team. And what that does is it helps people envision it in their own world and go, oh yeah, we are good at that. Oh yeah, we do struggle with focus on speed and innovation, so process and efficiency isn't always our strong suit. Yeah, I can think of a couple times when that's bit us. So that's an exercise that you do to help them take these kind of generic strengths and cautions and turn it into real examples in their world. So everyone goes, ah, yeah, I do see how that shows up. Then you're going to hit kind of the next button in the software, right? And it's going to go, here's some recommendations for a team that has that set of strengths and these caution areas. And what you're going to do now is help this team look at these recommendations. They're just ideas. They don't mean they aren't necessarily the ones that you have to do. But what you're really going to do is ask this team to do this, which is come up with an action plan. One or two things that if this team started doing this would help this team be more effective together, right? And oftentimes you might break them out into breakout groups, right? 2 or 3 people in a group with an assignment to think deeply about this and come back with a really thorough one idea. The one thing we could do that would help this team get better is this, right? And you're going to get people back together, talk about it, vote, or decide on the 1 or 2 things that you would take action on. And this is the key part, right? It may or may not come from these recommendations. People might look at one of these and go, oh yeah, that's the thing. Or they might come up with their own idea of what would help the team be more effective. But that action planning part is you can take an hour right there in the room, go do action plans, come back with ideas, hear from people, and then identify your 1 or 2 things that your team is going to commit to, right? So that first part of the process, the way it works is, like we talked about, you're going to walk through individual strengths and what they contribute in do's and don'ts, right? You're going to look at who do we have in each quadrant? Where do we have a bunch of people? Where do we have not many or none? Then you're going to look at the team type, strengths and caution areas, and build an action plan, which is 1 or 2 actions. And these are usually simpler items than you think. And when I show you a couple case studies in a minute, I think it'll help. But simple is effective in terms of helping a team be more successful. And they can do one thing. It's not a new day job, right? And too often we sign up for 9 things we're going to do. And we do 8 of them with lousy quality and depth, right? We always say, how about starting with this one thing that we all identified would make a big difference for this team, do it well. And when you have that nailed, then move to the second one, but not until then. And now it becomes doable for a team. So this is the first part, discover our team, right? Who are we as individuals? What is our team type? Where do we have a lot of strength? Where do we have some cautions? And then let's take an action that would help this team function more effectively together. That's part 1. And that's usually about a 4-hour session to do that in person with a team. Sometimes it can go more. It rarely, and never in our case with a client, has gone less. But it shouldn't be, a day-long session. You want to keep it to, let's get to the actions. So might it spill into 5 or 6 hours with a big team and a lot to talk about? Sure. But not keep it. We're not going to make a federal case out of this, right? We got to get to the insights and the actions. That's the key part of it. So before I go to part 2, I want to see if there's any questions on part 1. And it will help when I illustrate a couple case studies around the actions and what insights you might be getting for sure. So first part, how do we help a team be better? Second part is called design for strategic action. So same team, but now you're going to look at the team's goals or goal, right? What are the things we have to deliver this year? Every team has some goals, right? And what you're going to do is look at in the software, it gives you this list of objectives. Objectives is just another way to say, what are the things this team needs to be good at in order to achieve the goals? And you could look at your 3, 4, 5 most important goals collectively, you could look at one goal and say, we just want to focus on one goal. What you're going to do is have the team get aligned on selecting 3 to 5 things from this objectives list that the team must do well or be good at in order to achieve its goals, right? And sometimes this has to be thought of in the broadest sense, right, of the term. Sell the company's products or services to customers. If you're an HR team, your customers are going to be leaders and employees inside the organization, right? And you sell some products or services that you provide to your customers, right? So you always take the broadest sense of these things. But what happens is a team is going to pick the 3 to 5 things they must be good at in order to achieve their goals. And when you do that, right, then you'll get these purple bars to say, we picked 2 things that we have to be good at that need strength in teamwork and employee experience. We also picked 2 things that are about process and precision. And we picked 1 thing that needs some strength in innovation and agility. So when you select your 3 to 5 objectives or things you need to be good at, you push another button in the software, right? And what it will now do is say, ooh, you're a pathfinding team, but given the objectives or stuff you need to be good at, you chose, you're actually pursuing this kind of strategy. So another part of the science is PI has done work to say, what are the different kinds of strategies that teams and organizations are pursuing? And they're defined, right? And they're in the software. And it's saying, because you need to be good at this, you're pursuing an anchoring strategy. And what's next? It's going to say, if you have this kind of pathfinding team, this collection of humans against these things, anchoring strategy, the purple little bars, the stuff you need to be good at, here's the strengths this team has in trying to achieve that strategy. And here's the caution areas. And just like we did in part 1, right? You're now going to go into the software where it's going to make recommendations. And there's oodles of recommendations in the software to say, what help might we get? But you're going to do the same thing, which is, how do we pick 1 or 2 actions that would help this team more effectively achieve its goals? So not 10 or 12, 1 or 2 things that would make a difference. So part 1, team type, 1 or 2 actions that would help this team function better together. Part 2, against our goals, 1 or 2 actions that would help this team more likely get there on time, on quality, more smoothly, more effectively accomplish these outcomes. So the design for strategic action process, part 2, we're going to get alignment. Those 3 to 5 objectives are stuff this team must be good at to hit our key goals. Then it'll tell us our strategy type and team type and strengths and caution areas. We're going to do the same thing, which is we're going to come up with 1 or 2 actions that can help this team more effectively achieve those goals. And we're going to create some accountability, right? Before we walk out of the room, what's the plan? Who's got what responsibility, accountability? What does success look like? What roles are people going to play to make sure we're on track, right? So this second session often takes about 4 hours as well. So you can do this whole process usually in 2 4-hour sessions. If you've got a bigger team where there's a lot of stuff you got to work through, you might need a third session of a couple, 3 hours to finish it up. But your teams will want to do it because they'll be seeing the value, they'll be seeing the insights, they'll be excited about taking some actions. But part of this is, don't let this stretch into a 2-day process because it doesn't need to be, right? And that's the beauty of this, is a couple 4 to 6 hour sessions. They don't have to be in the same day. You can separate it by a couple weeks or whatever, and you can get to some actions that people are taking that can make a difference for sure. So let's talk about a couple of case studies of some clients we've worked with. And we've changed all the names to protect the innocent and guilty and all of them among them. But we were working with a talent acquisition team, and this was the team, right? So they've got a lot of good innovation, agility, strength, results in discipline, process, and precision. No one in the teamwork and employee experience area, right? They just don't have people that are really good at that. And look at how many bars are there, right? 3 bars. So a key part of them achieving their objectives was to be good at this, right? So software said they're a producing team with a cultivating strategy. And it's always common that these things are different. Almost every single team has differences between the team type and the strategy type. Even when they don't, even when there's really close similarity between team type and strategy, there's still strengths and caution areas that team has to deal with, right? So what are the strengths? They had these strengths: drive for results, getting things done with speed and efficiency, take on new challenges, no problem, right? Cautions: people might make decisions individually and quickly, might move forward without ensuring employees feel comfortable, right? And that competitive spirit may not resonate, right, with the organization where a lot of collaboration is needed. And you can just imagine, right? How do you not collaborate with hiring managers as a talent acquisition group? Yeah, it was kind of a problem, right? So we talked about it some more in terms of that and said, well, what is this teamwork and employee experience thing all about? Collaboration, socially interpersonally sensitive, right? Communicate by talking things through, make decisions collaboratively, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look at those caution areas, right? And you would say, well, my gosh, isn't this obvious that they need to do more communication and getting feedback and buy-in from hiring managers on initiatives and process and strategy, let alone candidates? It's not obvious to them, right? They're just rolling out of bed and being them and playing to their strengths, which is go fast, make decisions, make things happen, roll, right? But their hiring managers were not well informed and on board and part of and bought into these processes. So what would happen if this team didn't slow down to deliberately, intentionally recognize this gap? They would probably make some well-intentioned efforts to let's do a better job communicating and collaborating, right? And how far is that going to get them? Not very, right? Check in with them in 6 or 12 months. You got the same problem, which is they're running 100 miles an hour, maybe doing great work, but their hiring managers aren't on board and aren't informed. So unless we do something deliberate, right? Take an action that the team is aligned on, that they're agreed on, that they do, we can't save them from themselves, right? Even with the best of intentions, for sure. So in this case, it was absurdly simple, right? The team came up with the thought of, well, we have regular team meetings, right? Yep. Is there an agenda? There sure is. So guess what needs to be at the bottom of every team agenda is an action item that we actually stop and pause on and say, who do we need to talk to about what? What hiring managers, what people in the business do we need to talk to about what and get feedback on? And then they got a very deliberate process to say, okay, Hero, you need to go talk to so-and-so about this and come back next week with this feedback, buy-in, input. Tom, it's this, so-and-so, it's that. And at the top of every agenda, at the beginning of every meeting going forward, it was, where do we stand? Hero, what did hiring manager XYZ say? What did hiring manager ABC say? Where are we? Right? And you go, come on, couldn't they have come up with something as simple as that, a little parliamentary procedure on their own? Well, they weren't doing that, and they were kind of surprised and wondering why they were struggling so much at this, because that's not their behavior, right? But having a little bit of structure and process to say, we are not going to start or end meetings without checking in. Have we done our diligence to get feedback and input and buy-in so that we're not running alone in the forest and our hiring managers aren't with us? Right? So a little structure, a little process, and then the right person making sure that that was part of every single agenda, results and discipline. So what they did was they moved the agenda for the meeting being owned by SL, this leader, who was not going to be great on the follow-up, follow-through, detail, wash, rinse, repeat, make sure it's exactly right. And PR, this person over here, became in charge of that meeting agenda and making sure that they gave that the airtime and that they took it and finished it every single time. Bottom of the agenda, that person was responsible, making sure there was total clarity. Who's going to talk to who about what? What is the assignment? What is the timeline? When do we need to have that back? Top of the agenda, new meeting. We're not moving forward until we hear from people and cross that off the list. The leader was terrible at doing that and didn't have the patience for it. This person was going to execute it come hell or high water, right? And it was something that the team could do with effort, but weren't, right? And it was costing them. Their reputation with their hiring managers was not great, and they knew it. And this helped them go, well, no wonder, right? And when I talk about simple actions, a lot of you are probably going, really? Come on, they should have figured that out. This is how it is with teams. When they have an area like this, they're probably not going to figure it out, especially, and if it's important to their success, good luck, right? So another example, executive team, C-level, right? Real team, just change the names and all that to protect them. Here's what the team was made up of. Notice they had 3 bands in process and precision, what they needed to be good at to execute their strategy this year. And 2 over here, where they have 1 person. If you're wondering what the prediction is for this team succeeding at their strategy, I told them this, right? If I was in Vegas, I would bet the house against you executing this strategy when you have to be good at 3 things here, 2 things here, and you got 1 human. Unless you do something different in terms of who could help, right? Because this person is probably already loaded up with this kind of stuff trying to help this team, right? So they were a pathfinding team and they needed to do executing strategy. So now you go, well, they don't necessarily have the right people to be able to flex or enough of them to move over there, right? Sure. And look at the strengths, right? Creative, producing, risk-taking, speed, right? And moving fast. Communication, need to know basis, may get bored with some of the repetition around process and precision things, right? And they unintentionally just break things and reinvent things that don't need to be broken at odds with results and discipline. So they read this and they went, oh yeah, oh boy, right? We're in trouble for sure. And process and precision, focus on predictability, organized, right? Communicate concisely. Things are put together, right? For sure. So what do they need to do? Well, this is an executive team of a big organization on some of the most important initiatives that they've got in the company. So what they needed to do was think about, who do we have in our ranks that might be good at this process and precision stuff and this results and discipline stuff? Because what a wonderful development opportunity to go get some really good people who have strengths in these areas and say, we need you to play a role in helping this organization achieve this or these goals, right? What a wonderful thing. You're setting people up for success with real work, the fastest way for any human to develop, right? And they get to have some exposure at the C-level and get to work on some of these initiatives that are really, really important to the company's success. Right? Let's phone a friend. Let's find the folks we've got in our ranks already who could help on something as important as this, because we just don't have enough of the right people to stretch and flex, which is okay and common for sure, right? So that was the strategy. How do we look in our organization and find some folks who'd be great at this? What a development opportunity, what an exposure opportunity to come work on something like this. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. So when you're facilitating these, what is key? Just to focus on what resonates. When people see a team type or strengths and cautions, even though I said, boy, is there a lot of resonance, there might be an item where they go, I don't think that really applies to us. Good. Let's not worry about it, right? If there's a strength or a caution area, they go, that's not us. Move on, right? Let's work on the strengths and caution areas that are resonant, right? We don't have to argue that this is right. What we want is what sounds right, what feels right to you. Let's go to work there. The second thing is on that part 1, it's so important to talk about individuals first in terms of their strengths, what they can bring to the team that helps, do's and don'ts, because now no one feels like I have to be defensive about whatever dysfunction, whatever other stuff, whatever self-talk is in their head. And they can go, you're right, I am good at that. You're right, I can bring that to the team. And then you can move up to the team level, right? And that talking about heroes, do's and don'ts in mind, creates actionable information. Everyone on the team gets a little insight. Okay, I got to keep that in mind when I'm working with Hero. And at a team level, we start seeing beyond functional titles or silos or the way we've traditionally thought about roles and saying, Hero's really good at this teamwork employee experience stuff. I wonder what else she could help us with that may not be in her, job title today. But if it's as important as our strategy or key goals, we could probably free up some time to have her help. The third piece is when it comes to the action planning, everyone wants to go to the buffet and load their plate up with too much stuff, right? That does not work. What does work is limiting a team to one action at a time, the one thing that would have the biggest impact, and be super clear before you leave the room. What is success? Who's responsible for what? How are we going to start taking action? What's the timeline, right? And solutions are simple, right? For sure. One of the things that this team did in terms of part one on how they work together more effectively, their meetings had gotten down to 2 hours once a month because they were so ineffective. So they started just saying less and less and less and less time on the meetings, right? And the person running the meetings was this person right here, who is the CEO, a maverick profile, structure, process, being clear, concise, and thorough, not his forte. So what we did was we nominated this person, who is the CFO, to say, let's instill some parliamentary procedure into this team's meetings. This person is going to develop the agenda. This person is going to run the meetings. And these meetings are going to take on a different format and structure in terms of the only things that are going to get onto the C-level meeting are these kind of things. This team, right? Look at all this innovation agility. You can think about high A and B, low C and D. They told me in the meeting, as we talked about it, oh yeah, we would get into a major debate about what the actual wood grain color of that cabinet is if you let us, right? What will they debate and go on and talk about? Anything, right? If you let them, like, hey, squirrel, look at that, and they will go, right? So what we need to do is go, no, we've got a prioritized meeting and we're going to get alignment before we leave the room, which means we're going to meet maybe a little longer with quality and depth, fully discuss it and decide. And we're going to have fewer items on the agenda. And this person, who's going to be ruthless about results and discipline, is in charge of making sure we have quality meetings, the planning that gets done before, how we move through the agenda and not getting knocked off stride, and making sure we get aligned on decisions before we leave. So this was as simple as we need to change the structure of the meeting, but we can't just have the leader run the meeting because the leader is not actually the best person to run a good meeting. This person is, right? And it wouldn't have worked if they hadn't come to it together and gone, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired of these ineffective meetings. So now we're willing to commit. And the CEO delegated to this person, I want you to run the meetings. And they discussed and agreed on that structure going forward, right? So those kind of things, when we say there's simple solutions, they are. But why haven't they discovered it on their own? These are smart, capable, successful people because it's not what they're naturally good at, right? So they're just kind of being them. Without some intervention and commitment, you're probably not going to get enough impact to make a difference. But with an intervention and alignment, the solutions are not often super complicated. They can be that simple, for sure. So those are some of the best practices, right? 1 or 2 actions, that's it. And then how do we have a little accountability after, right? That's where defining what success looks like and who's responsible for what and timeline is so important before you leave the room so that the team can hold themselves accountable to this one thing and stay on track. So on our prior example, we talked about that team that had lots of results in discipline areas of need and no one there. This is not uncommon. This is common. You'll see teams where they have gaps. Our talent acquisition team didn't have a teamwork and employee experience piece of it, right? This team has one person right here, right? And one here, but they've got 2 bands that are important on teamwork and 2 on process and precision. So it means we've got a lot of need to do this well to execute. And we've only got one person there. Guess how loaded up this person probably already is with process and precision work, right? Probably to their eyeballs. So now we say, What can we do? How can we go find more people that might be really good at this, right? They don't have to be on this team. If it's important, goals or strategy, could you bring some folks on in a part-time role or project role or just in a role to help in some way? Sure, you could, right? And that's where you can look in your ranks and not just the usual suspects. The usual suspects are, let's go ask the people we ask to help us with everything that are already overloaded and overworked, right? Because if we can get beyond the usual suspects and select some people because they're really good at this, now we're cooking. Now we probably have more resource than we realized, right? So these are called balancers, right? You have a lot of people maybe up in one area like innovation agility and few over here. They're providing balance to the team. They can fill in those gaps and keep the team grounded. Sometimes they can be overlooked, right? Because they're the only one that, or one of a few who's like that, or run over because there's only one or two of them saying, hey guys, how about a little process and precision, right? And then 8 people shout them down. We don't have time for process and precision. Let's go. And often they are already really, really busy because there's only one of them, right? So that's where we say we've got to look to find some other folks because this could be crucial to the team executing well. If it is, we got to phone a friend, right? And phone a friend is there's worthwhile strategies. You probably have more important work than you can get to. We usual suspects get assigned everything, and we don't have perfect teams or leaders. And unfortunately, silos and functional roles usually dictate who does what instead of, we have some people that are really good at this stuff. It doesn't matter as much what their silo or functional role is if they have strength there, right? And the truth is, you've got some really good employees and stars and high potentials who have varying strengths and development needs. And real work assignments are the fastest, most effective ways to develop talent, right? And get people better. And we want to set them up for success, right? We want to pick people and put them in roles or give them assignments that they'd really be good at. Because then that exposure, perception, relationship building, all can happen and see them in their best light, right? And this development opportunity to use people to help your teams where they have gaps is an amazing opportunity for sure. So, and it helps you see beyond the usual suspects. When I was working with a team I just talked about, I said, hey guys, let's not pick the usual suspects. And a couple of them said, we always do that. Sure, they do, right? Because they're these great, wonderful people that you know that you go to. Well, there's others that you have that you may not know that could be equally or more successful if you gave them this opportunity. So it can tell you what is a team missing, that it needs to be more successful. And then you can use the software to say, who do we have that might not be formally on this team, but could join or help in some way if we ask them? And now you can put development on steroids, because what would be better than helping some of your best people work on some of your most important objectives, right? There's no better development opportunity than that. And think about the value prop to them. You get this exposure. It's something you're good at. You're going to get some experience, maybe at a different level or a different team than you've ever had. Those are all ways to win big for sure. So when you're looking for those people, and we have some materials and a guide on this to say, okay, who should I look for if I'm looking for innovation and agility and need help there? It's probably people with those reference profiles, right? What about teamwork and employee experience? It's some of these kind of folks that could really help you. Process and precision. These are the reference profiles you might look like. Results and discipline, we need help there. You're going to look for these kind of folks, right? And it's a really simple process, which is you can go to the software and just sort by reference profile, right? And you might have 20 or 30 people in results and discipline. And then among those 20 or 30, you're going to go, oh, there's 2 or 3 we haven't, or 4 we haven't thought of. Ooh, how about them? Some of them aren't going to be right for it, but some are. And what you can do is then uncover these resources who might be good at what. So this is one of the really good ways to use reference profiles, is to find out where you have some strength that may not be top of mind usual suspects to add to a team or a project to help you be more successful. So those are ways to deal with the teams you have in place. One of the other really good uses of the tool is to build a team based on what it needs to be good at to be successful, right? So you're kind of reverse engineering. we have these goals or these things that this team needs to do well in order to succeed, you can start there and go, how do we need to populate this team with the right balance so that they could win? So we had a situation where we had a client had a really significant, massive, multi-$100 million IT system conversion they were going to execute, right? So they had to be really good at process and precision, results in discipline, as you can imagine, system transformation, and a little bit of innovation and agility to push, push, push. So they built a team, right, to do that. And then we looked at their strategy, right? Their strategy was an executing strategy. Need a little dose of innovation and agility, plenty results of discipline, plenty of process and precision. When they showed us the team they had built, here's what they had, right? Lots of very technically capable, high patience, high detail, analytical folks. And they built the team before they looked at what the team needed to be good at. So this was the team they had against this strategy. And they said to us, right, of course we built an excellent group of technical people, all that steadiness, process, detail, et cetera, but high patience, high detail. So when they called and said, how do you think this team is going to do? We said, how long do you have for this project to be done? Do you have 8 or 10 years? And they said, oh God, no, we've got like 24 months. And we said, while it will be a beautiful work of perfect art and science, no problems, no issues, the chance that they're going to move fast enough to get it done is about 0.0%, right? They're just not going to go. So what we had to do is say, look, we need to introduce some fast-paced people that are going to push this team to go faster and make decisions. The team's going to have someone who's going to make some risk-based decisions and push this team to go more quickly than they are going to be comfortable. So we introduced some other folks on the team who were going to be exactly that. And you can just imagine how this team was going to greet risk-oriented, fast-paced people who want to make decisions and go, right? Problem, and disaster waiting to happen if we didn't then also help them work through the process of here's the value they're going to bring, here's the value this group brings, and how to figure this out together. It makes perfect sense that they built the team this way. But then when you look at the goals, you go, we can already tell quality is going to be good, but we will never be there on time. So what you can do, have initiatives or goals for the year. You want to put a team together. First, do that objectives part to identify what you need to be good at. Then you could back into how do we populate it with the right balance of enough folks so that this team will be effective. And when you have balance on a team, it also means you're going to have differences, right? So they're apt to be at each other without you helping them understand how to be effective together. But it's a way you can start with the goal in mind and build a team after that. And it's an underused, but I think brilliant strategy and can avoid this, which in hindsight, of course they did this. It makes perfect sense. It just isn't going to work, right? So a couple best practices when using design. Oftentimes clients are using a little PI Lite, which is an hour and a half session to really know the individual behaviors deeper of everyone on the team, create awareness of that, create a better sense of do's and don'ts. This gets into individuals pretty deeply and helps them really get a good foundation before they come to this. It doesn't mean you have to. It's just a number of our clients that are using design have had success with that because some teams just need awareness. If you just need some awareness of each other and how to work together, this can work well, right? If you want a team to go to the next level, meaning the team's willing to spend the time and effort to not just get awareness, but go through the process we described and commit to actions, good, right? And this can help people kind of satisfy that need of awareness of each other, but not every team needs design. And the ones that do, you should hold them accountable to say, I need you to be committed to actions and finish this thing to get results. Because the awareness is wonderful. It's really good. It's really interesting. We're talking about our favorite subject in the whole world, ourselves, neat, cool, et cetera. But without outcomes and actions, we haven't necessarily changed trajectory. So 1 or 2 clear actions. I can't emphasize this enough. The actions are often simple, but that's what makes them effective. And those caution areas are there because it's not what they're good at, not what they naturally gravitate to. Teams will really like the awareness piece when you're talking about the strengths and cautions and team type. They find that fascinating. But what we really need them to do is take actions that change outcomes, right? So as a facilitator, that's your job, is to make enough time for action planning and commitment to outcomes and make it really clear, right? Because then we can move the needle. Thinking beyond roles. People think about work and think about titles and roles and hierarchy. It's okay, but this gives you what people would be good at without that constraint. And it lets you think about within a team or outside a team, who could play a role that they don't today. CFO is going to run these meetings for this senior team going forward because that person was really well suited to do it and the CEO wasn't, right? As just one example for sure. And then when do you refresh or revisit? If you do it well, meaning teams get outcomes and they take actions, they want to refresh. Maybe they have new people that have joined, a new leader, or they're refreshing their goals and objectives, right? Halfway into the year, or it's a new year. This could be and should be a process that happens with some consistency to help any team identify those couple actions. And when it's 2 4-hour sessions like that, it's not unreasonable to think a team might do that annually, right? Or when they maybe have some big changes, for sure.
We're up on the hour here, so I want to make sure we are telling our friends who joined us today how they can get design and how we can help them with the next steps.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go there. Thank you, Hero. So there's 3 things you can do. If you have design and you've got some PI training, you want to facilitate it, we've got a facilitator guide that you can get from us and a deck that's got a low detail version facilitator guide and a high detail version for a do-it-yourself that can help you. T3. So if you have a group of people, HR folks often, or OD or trainers, who say, I'd like to train them and really how to facilitate this in depth, we have a 4-hour training. It's just a flat fee to do it. You can invite as many people as you want, and we'll go through in depth exactly how to facilitate this program and train as many folks as you'd like in a single session for a simple flat fee. You could also bring us in, which is sometimes people bring us in to do executive teams or high stakes teams. And there's a fee for us to do that. And we'll come in and do everything for you, including the prep work, the sessions, and a little bit of that follow-up. So those are options for how to facilitate. And if you would like to know more about this or just demo this, just, reach out to us, right? Reach out to your consultant or support@mindwiregroup.com. We can help you build a team in the software, show you what it's like, show you pricing, all that good stuff for sure. So sorry, we ran a little bit over, a lot of content here. If you have any questions or you want to ask about anything and hang out for a few minutes, Hero and I are very happy to do that. We'll stay on. Or if you have more questions, reach out to your consultant and they'll sit down with you and absolutely help you with how to facilitate this or think about it or even just get more information about it. So last thing really quickly, April webinar, we've got some things in mind, but we'd love to have you vote really quickly on what you might like to see us do in April. And if you have to jump off the second, no problem. We'll send you this survey so you can still weigh in because we want to make sure these are valuable for you. So if you have a moment, tell us what you'd like us to talk about in April. If you don't, we'll send you an email with this poll. And otherwise, thank you for joining. Sorry I ran over. My high B ran away from me here. But we really appreciate you joining and engaging with us here. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. And thanks for being with us.